Hi everybody, been a while since I've done one of these videos and the moment has arrived again where I don't feel I can get enough of my thoughts into a single tweet to properly express what I'm thinking. The topic of today, of course, is going to be the commentators. The tier 2, tier 3 discussion which has been going on, even some of the tier 1 discussions going on through Reddit, through certain triggers that began the whole conversation, and then the follow-up conversations which have been happening with a lot of influencers and other people inside the Dota 2 community. So the first thing is, we talk about tier 2 and tier 3 talent. Why are they being hired? Why are they not being hired? So first thing you have to look into is budget. Tournaments are actually cutting down how many talent they're bringing just because the budgets are just not there. This is a whole thing which kind of stems into DPC, which will take a longer explanation, but for now I want to focus on the talent. So for now you'll just have to take my word for it and just research a little bit yourself why the DPC is actually making it so there's less budget for tournaments. So we look at the fact that budgets are starting to drop, so organizers are getting more efficient. JJ actually said this, Pipmunkle, saying like, most tournament organizers now are looking for 2 primary casting pairs and then a whole bunch of different hybrids that can work both panel as well as potentially cast during group stage, because you need more commentators for group stage and you need more panelists for main event. So these hybrid people that can jump from one to the other are becoming a lot more sought after. And there's a lot of good people already in the scene that's capable of doing this. So what's happening is we're getting a smaller talent pool. This is why some tier 1 talent are not being hired for things. Myself, I am having no DPC for 2 rounds, so 1 minor, 1 major, 1 minor, 1 major, 2 rounds. I'm not casting either of these. If it wasn't actually for the ESL events, I would have about 4 months off casting Dota 2. And this is where things get a little interesting. I'll talk about sustainability at the end of the video and what is ahead for Dota talent. But to get back to the point, so the opportunities are becoming less. But because the budgets are becoming less, you're also seeing like where there's only like 1 big casting pair that gets hired, and then there's opportunity for others to slip in. I think Dream League was the greatest example of this, where you had Moxie and Lizard as a core part of the coverage team. Now they are there because obviously the budget's not great, but they're the people that you kind of want to take a chance on. You know they're going to do a pretty good job. You tried them actually out during your group stage and you liked working with them, so you hire them for the main event as well. You know they're going to be a little bit cheaper than a lot of the tier 1 talent, so this becomes more attractive to you and you're still very happy with the product that they bring. So that's your whole thing of like, can I actually get selected? Are there opportunities? Yes, there are. Why are you selected? Second point, and this is the big one. For any talent out there that is a tier 2 or tier 3, and for any community member that hears a tier 2 or a tier 3 talent bitching on social media or whatever, that they're just like, oh, I haven't been invited to an event in a while. If you see that, tell them to shut the fuck up. Very, very happy. 0 tolerance policy on that. If you see me doing it, tell me to shut the fuck up. Because it's a very entitled approach. It's like, I deserve to be there. What? Because I cast 40 hours in 1 week for Dota and I got like 3 Reddit posts saying thank you very much for my coverage. Hey, that's terrific. You did a service for the community, but that doesn't instantly mean that you're ready to do a LAN event or you're ready to do an official broadcast or that you've actually shown why you should be hired over somebody else, that there's already an established relationship with the tournament organizer and the commentator. Because the tournament organizer at the end of the day wants to have someone that they know they can trust and it's not going to be a headache. So when you come out and you say, oh, I need the community on my side to get me hired for this event, you are going the opposite direction for where you need to go. The community is fantastic to fanboy one person and fanboy someone else the next day. How many times have we seen, man, I really love Nahar's thread, and then I really hate Nahar's thread? It happens a lot. And it creates the controversy that a tournament organizer will normally look to avoid. They want less complication in a world which is very complicated already, which is Dota LAN events or just Dota coverage in general. So don't piss them off. Think about even some level of media training before you go into this. And the other critical part of that, of like why you should be hired, what do you do as a caster that's different to everyone else? Are you a better hype caster? Are you a better analyst? Do you have a different way of looking at the game? Are you a former professional player? And you're judging things. Like, what leg do you have to stand on that makes you a better analyst than everyone else? You look at the way Purge does this. Okay, Purge played for Zephyr. He was a pro player for a period of time. But what makes him someone that people want to have on a panel because he's very relatable. He breaks things down to a base level that everyone at home can understand, and it feels like I actually want to sit there and be educated, even though most of the time, like, I was terrible at studying, and Purge just makes me want to sit there and study Dota, and he'll teach me. He's a great teacher on that front, and that's where his niche is. His niche is everyday Dota players want to hear from him. Welcome to Dota, you suck. It's a reality and an education. What do you bring? Why should you be hired over Purge? Purge didn't even work the fucking main event for TI, which to me is a travesty. But if he doesn't get hired, why should you? You need to answer that question if you're going to be a talent in this world. And you need to know like what kind of angle you want to take before you even think about starting to say like, hey, I'm not getting hired for this event. Set yourself a goal, become something. Capitalist was also tweeting out about this, that like when he came into the Dota scene, he was like, okay, what's going to be my goal? How do I become the best? I set myself this goal and I work towards it because he sees either an opening in the market or something that he can do. Strengths of his, strengths of the people he wants to surround himself with, and how he can become, in my mind, the most versatile talent in the Dota world. He can hypecast. I actually think he should even do better work if he gets paired with a pure play-by-play as an analyst. I think he'd be great in that situation. He's great on panel, both as an analyst as well as a host. He can interview, he can do side content. He's just this great quirky personality that gives everything he's got. And that is like you're competing against this when you go into this talent pool. And as a community, I think it's also great to take an analytical eye and not just a, man, thanks for really just being there. Why are they there? And is it just because they're there that you like this person when other people were not? Grant started out that way, but he was always there. He always brought then his own style to things. Yeah, early on, maybe that was a little bit more of a controversial style, but he developed himself into something which went from very controversial to acceptable to TI stage level. That's a huge progression, and he understood like parts of him he wants to stay true to. So you got to be genuine with what you do, but he also understood like why would he be hired for TI unless he brought a specific thing. So he worked it out. So if you're a talent out there, you need to work this kind of stuff out because there's less opportunities, especially with the DPC in the current way it is. And you got to think about sustainability. There's a lot of online casting, but a lot of this stuff is being done through like BTS coverage, the contracts they do with their normal third-party casters. How do you get onto their radar? It's not that hard. It really isn't. BTS is always looking, and you can always bring up your name to them as well. And there's other groups as well. Do you want to work with Moonduck? Do you want to work directly with JD when they do the ESL coverage? Like, get a name for yourself. There are so many people also looking for this. You need to be able to stand up with your name and say, I am different. And get into these circles, get into these coverages. You are so lucky in Dota 2 that this video policy exists because it allows anybody to cover any game, to get their name out there. Bulldog couldn't do what he did without this video policy, and casters who don't have studios and just want to make a name for themselves, this is your opportunity. This is your window in. Every single game of Dota is open to you. What are you going to do with it that the community is going to want and the community is going to like you for and tournament organizers will want to use you for? Simple open question on that front. And maybe you'll find the answer, and then maybe you'll find yourself casting games on these channels which have exposure and get your big break, because that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the big break. Sometimes it kind of just comes to you because you're naturally talented. Sometimes you got to work really difficult at it. I can tell you right now, I'm not naturally talented as a commentator. I'm very happy that my original cast from the very early days of like 2003, 2004 died somewhere in the internet, and they cannot be found because I sounded so bland. I knew what I was talking about because I was talking about a game that I played like professionally, if we say it in 2003, at that time. So I was actually the analyst, believe it or not, at that time. But I was so boring as crap, and I had to develop myself over time. You don't always start off with everything. You have to work up to it if you're not talented like myself. And I worked my ass off to get where I am. And don't think that you can just pop up and say, you know what, in 6 months' time, Like, I'm gonna just full-time stream on Twitch and I'm gonna be the best, because like that's the dream story. If it happens, fantastic, but don't rely on it. It takes hard work to get where you are, and it's a disservice and it's a discredit to everyone who works in this industry if you just think that you can just rock up and do it. There are some things, like great examples is pro players. Like, this is something I think I posted on Reddit about this, where you could say like, but what about a pro player? Like, we can just have all of OG just sit on a couch and they just talk about the game. That's terrific, but that's not commentary. That's a different type of thing. There's very different audiences for very different styles of content. The reason why I said Slack should never be a commentator is because he is so great at creating this fun, quirky content, which is great in 5-minute snippets, but you have too much of it and it's the wrong type of energy. It's not something you can consume for an entire day. And with the players, you can do it because you feel like you're being entered into their own conversations, but eventually you'll probably sit there and go, I like this, but what does everyone else like? Like, am I still going to get the great viewership? There's a specific audience that you're targeting with a type of content. And that's something that I think you got to think about when you try and say like, oh, well, people can't just jump on and do this. Imagine what a pro player could do if they had some level of media training or some level of commentary training. What could they then achieve? Most analysts would be out of the job, because these guys, if they wanted to retire from playing, would just outshine everybody. So what do you offer that you can continue to offer? And that's the last point I want to get into, is longevity. Why should we still continue to keep our jobs? If you have a professional player who's very entertaining and can hypecast the way I hypecast, I'm pretty much out of the job. And I know that, and I'm fine with that as well. Like, I've had a very good run in my career. And eventually the new wave of talent will come in. And I feel it's very important that we have a high expectation for this talent, and we don't just accept subpar coverage, both in what a talent offers and what a tournament organizer offers as well, because it makes our scene look a lot weaker. And that's not something we should be happy just to accept and say, you know what, we can forgive it. Like, we're now 8 years into Dota 2, and we had a huge history through Warcraft 3 Dota as well. Why should we accept something less? We've got to push to be harder. Other games coming out there with huge viewer numbers. Yes, Dota is most definitely sustaining because we have a fantastic community which is very dedicated to the game. That you cannot ever replace. And it's the reason why, if anyone ever says Dota is dead, they are totally lying. Dota will never die. But death when it comes to industry is to not continue to grow and continue to move forward and to continue to attract new players. So our content, our whole community has to be pushed towards this goal where we don't just keep our current players happy, we also bring in new players. And a lot of this comes through having content. That's a whole different thing, which I'm not going to go into right now, of why the content creators are leaving this world. But I can tell you right now, for longevity, as a small point at the end, it is not enough to sustain as a full-time commentator in Dota 2 for much longer. The competition is a lot more ripe. There are a lot less slots than there were previously, not just for the overlapping of tournament options, but for the fact that there's not many DPC events anymore, and the third-party events, while they're great, the scheduling is nightmare. Like, I could have been working WSOE, which I was invited to, as well as ESL, but they overlapped. There is no coordination in the calendars, which makes this even more complicated. So there's a lot of issues that talent do face. Merlini and LD retired for very good reasons as well. And these reasons are not going away. There's been no solution to these reasons. So keep it in mind as things go on. I may talk more about that at some other point. But for now, I think the primary thing I just want to push into both the commentators out there that are making these type of comments and have this type of attitude, and the community that are watching them. Because really, you are the ones who keep talent in check. You are the ones who are just like, no, dude, no, you don't get away with that shit. Why should you be selected over somebody else? What skills do you have? And I'm talking skills, not just dedication. I'm talking, what skills do you have that put you above somebody else? That's all. That's all I wanted to say. Anyway, hopefully this made a lot of sense to people out there. I kind of want to post this just because I got a lot of thoughts up in here that I felt like I just wanted to express in something more than just a tweet, like 3-chain tweets. I don't feel like that ever serves enough of a purpose. So these are my thoughts. Hopefully you enjoy them, and who knows, I may have more of them and actually share more of them in the future. Thanks all.